Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are strapping in for a really high-stakes analysis of one of the most consequential and I think unexpected geopolitical partnerships we've seen in a while.
That's right.
We're talking about the surprising closeness between Donald Trump and Saudi Arabia's de facto leader, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, or, MBS as everyone calls him.
And it's so much more than just a relationship. It is, as the analysis we're digging into today describes it, a trillion-dollar tango. I mean, the stakes here are just massive.
Right.
We're talking about huge transfers of advanced weaponry, a fundamental bet on the future of artificial intelligence, and pretty significant realignment of power in the Middle East that's going to affect, well, everything. Global trade, security for decades to come.
So our mission for this deep dive is, I think, really crucial. We're going to be extracting the essential insights from some very complex reports. Specifically, we're leaning on the detailed analysis provided by Tenenbaum to understand the hidden details, the real geopolitical cost.
And what it all means for you, the listener, as you're trying to navigate a world that's just increasingly dominated by these huge power plays in tech and finance.
Exactly. Because this isn't about oil anymore, is it?
No, not really. That was the 20th century currency.
Yeah.
We were talking about access to, strategic defense technology and critically, this huge flood of cash that's going to be directed personally by a former U.S. president.
It's a whole new ballgame. So let's start by setting the stage. Let's talk about the central figure here. MBS.
Right.
He's the de facto ruler of the kingdom. The king is elderly, reportedly quite ill, so MBS holds all the reins of power. And he's defined by, well, ambition and a willingness to just break all the rules.
All the conventions, both at home and abroad. I mean, his rise to power was textbook Machiavelli, but with this spectacular modern flair. He has what you might call a special history, which I think we have to explore to really get why he's so confident in these negotiations.
You're talking about the Ritz-Carlton Roundup.
Exactly, the famous Ritz-Carlton Roundup.
That story it's just essential context. It's almost hard to imagine, but he basically arrested hundreds of the country's richest and most powerful people, princes, ministers, billionaires, and locked them all up.
In the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Riyadh.
In a luxury hotel.
Precisely. And they were held there not under any formal legal process, but just detained until they agreed to surrender huge amounts of their personal wealth back to the state.
In exchange for their freedom.
Yes. It was a clear, brutal, and frankly, incredibly effective show of absolute control. It netted the Saudi government an estimated $100 billion.
Wow.
And it sent an immediate signal to the world, and more importantly to his rivals at home, that MBS operates without any real constraints.
And that kind of, dramatic power play, it contrasts so sharply with his outward vision for the kingdom, but it also kind of complements it. We're talking about these pharaonic projects. He's trying to build this futuristic city, Neom, which is supposed to have the line.
The world's longest building, this mirror-clad skyscraper laid on its side, 170 kilometers long.
It's unbelievable.
But these projects, as the analysis points out, they're not just vanity. They are the absolute core of his strategy to diversify the Saudi economy.
To get away from just being a petrol state.
Exactly. They are using their massive, almost unfathomable capital to buy their way into the future. They're targeting the tech sphere, positioning the kingdom as a global destination for talent and innovation. It's a calculated long-term play to keep the wealth flowing when oil inevitably declines.
But to pull off that vision, he needed one thing first: full acceptance on the global stage. Which brings us to the very dark cloud that initially made him an international pariah.
The 2018 murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi.
Right. For any listener who might not be familiar with the details, this incident was a geopolitical bombshell.
It was an act of state violence that just shocked the world. It completely destabilized Western-Saudi relations for a time. Khashoggi was a prominent Saudi critic, a journalist for the Washington Post, and he was based in Turkey.
And he went into the Saudi consulate in Istanbul.
To get some paperwork.
Yeah.
And he just never came out. Intelligence reports later confirmed he was murdered inside the consulate. And the details that emerged were just horrific.
They dismembered the body, burned it, cremated it, a deliberate attempt to erase all the evidence.
All of it. And international intelligence agencies, including in the U.S., were very quick to point the finger directly at MBS as the one who ordered it, even if he wasn't physically there. That act plunged him into immediate diplomatic isolation.
He's a pariah.
A total pariah. Initially, the isolation was almost complete. I mean, even the Biden administration, after promising a big focus on human rights, bashed him severely in public. But as so often happens in geopolitics,
Necessity wins out over morality.
it always does. And that necessity arrived when oil prices just skyrocketed, putting massive pressure on Western economies.
So President Biden had to reverse course and meet MBS, and that's where we got the famous or infamous fist bump during his trip to Jeddah.
Right, the fist bump. It was a grudging, purely transactional acknowledgement that you just can't exclude the world's largest oil producer, especially not during a global energy crisis. But it didn't really clear his name.
No, it was awkward. It was forced.
It was. The true political rehabilitation, the one MBS desperately needed to move forward with his plans, that came with Donald Trump.
And the source materials we've reviewed highlight a complete, unqualified shift in posture from the Trump camp. According to the detailed reports provided to Tenenbaum, this rehabilitation was public, it was direct, and it was shockingly blunt.
Yeah. During a public meeting or a Q&A session where MBS was present, someone in the audience challenged the Crown Prince directly about the Khashoggi murder.
And Trump jumped in.
He intervened immediately. And this intervention was clearly designed to provide permanent political cover. Trump reportedly dismissed the whole murder, calling the accounts lies and stories told by the media.
He just said it wasn't true.
Flat out. But the most chilling part of this exchange, and this is detailed in the Tenenbaum analysis, was the personal attack on the victim himself. Trump claimed nobody liked Khashoggi.
That's just an astonishing statement. You're not just denying the crime, you're almost justifying it by saying the victim was unpopular.
It completely bypasses the entire legal and diplomatic outrage. And then he went even further, reportedly saying that things happen.
Things happen.
Suggesting that, these kinds of events, however regrettable, are just inevitable in the world of high-stakes power politics and should be dismissed for bigger strategic interests. This signal, a full, unequivocal political clearance, was precisely what MBS was buying with his immense investment promises. It allowed him to move out of that pariah shadow for good.
And the high-level meeting itself, it just underscored this new power dynamic that MBS was asserting.
Oh, absolutely.
The meeting had a strict, formal dress code. Black tie, smoking attire required. And yet
MBS shows up in traditional Saudi dress.
It's a calculated move, right?
Oh, completely. It's a fascinating display of asserting cultural and national dominance on foreign soil. Everyone else there, every major CEO, every diplomat, they're all playing by the Western rules.
We're talking about people like NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang.
A man who is famous for almost never wearing anything but his leather jacket. And yet, there he was in a tuxedo. But MBS shows up in his full traditional regalia. It's a deliberate, silent statement.
I'm meeting you, I'm negotiating with you, but I am setting the terms.
And I'm defining my own protocol. I have the cash, I have the power, and you have to accept me as I am.
That assertiveness really sets the stage for the core deal here. The staggering amounts of investment capital and the advanced weaponry. Let's talk about the investment escalation, because it played out in public like some kind of negotiation show.
It really did. The initial commitment that Saudi Arabia floated was already massive. We're talking $600 billion committed for investment into U.S. businesses and infrastructure.
Which is already a mind-boggling number.
It is. But MBS, understanding the transactional nature of this whole interaction, he upped the ante. He convinced Trump the commitment would reach the staggering figure of $1 trillion.
And the sources noted an interesting clarification of that number, $1 billion of millions. We should probably clarify that for our listeners.
It's a slightly awkward phrasing, probably comes from different linguistic or accounting conventions. But in the modern English financial definition, yes, that is $1,000 billion, 1 trillion. It's a sum designed to just dazzle and secure commitment.
And then Trump, in his classic public negotiation style, standing right in front of the American-Saudi Cooperation Institute, he just throws out an even higher number.
Let's make it $1.5 trillion.
It just speaks volumes about the performative nature of all this. Everything is a transaction, and the bigger the number, the better it looks.
Well, the optics are one thing, but the control is the really critical issue here. That $1 trillion isn't just going to flow into the U.S. market indiscriminately. The analysis from Tenenbaum highlights the mechanism.
Okay, so how does it work?
While the funds are technically directed by Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, or PIF, Trump himself will personally approve or direct where those investments land in the U.S.
So he's the gatekeeper.
He's the gatekeeper. This arrangement essentially lets the U.S. sell direct, personalized access to its economy and its strategic markets for this colossal investment. It completely changes the dynamic from a diplomatic partnership to really personalized patronage.
Okay, so now let's pivot to the other side of the deal. the arms. Specifically, the very controversial sale of the F-35 fighter jet. This transaction immediately creates geopolitical tension.
Enormous tension. Because this deal fundamentally violates a decades-old bedrock guarantee the U.S. provides to Israel.
The QME.
The qualitative military edge.
Yeah.
That guarantee stipulates that Israel must always possess the most advanced weaponry in the Middle East. Selling F-35s to Saudi Arabia directly breaches that policy, just like it did when the jets were sold to Turkey.
So why is the F-35 the gold standard? Why is it the weapon every regional power is scrambling to get their hands on?
It's the stealth capability, first and foremost. The F-35 is engineered with advanced materials, geometry, heat suppression, everything. If a modern radar unit targets an F-35, the signature it gets back is negligible.
So small, it's described as being the size of a golf ball.
Or even a marble. It's designed to penetrate protected airspace almost completely unseen, gather intelligence, and strike before the enemy even knows it's there.
But the analysis from Tenenbaum points out a crucial devil in the details here. The F-35 is not the U.S.'s ultimate plane.
No, not by a long shot. The U.S. is protecting its truly cutting-edge technology.
So what do they have that's better?
Well, the U.S. already operates the F-22 Raptor, which is more advanced in some ways. But more significantly, the U.S. is poised to introduce its next-generation air dominance platform, often called NGAD, around 2028.
And this is a major leap forward.
A massive leap. This future aircraft is reportedly 10 times better than the F-35 in several key metrics. It is designed to be completely zero radar detectable, truly invisible. It will have an immense operational range, capable of traveling 1,000 miles without refueling.
And it flies as part of a fleet concept. What does that mean?
It means it doesn't fly alone. The core manned aircraft is designed to fly with up to 7 accompanying drones, all in a coordinated combat team.
Wow.
It uses AI-driven man-unmanned teaming. It just fundamentally changes the nature of air combat. You have redundancy, massive sensor capability, overwhelming firepower. The F-35, by contrast, is a single platform.
So while Saudi Arabia is getting top-shelf hardware for today,
They're getting technology the U.S. is already preparing to supersede by a substantial margin tomorrow.
and even these stock F-35s that Saudi Arabia is supposed to get, they come with some serious operational baggage that the U.S. military struggles with itself.
This is a huge internal problem for the Pentagon. Some reports call it a logistical disaster. The F-35 program is just plagued by software bugs, maintenance complexities, parts shortages.
But how bad is it?
Only about 50% of the F-35s owned by the U.S. military are certified as mission capable, so able to fly at any given moment.
50%.
50%. The other half is constantly grounded, waiting for repair or upgrades or some complex diagnostic work. This logistical nightmare drastically impacts the aircraft's actual military usefulness.
So if the U.S. military itself can barely keep half of its own F-35s in the air, what does that mean for Saudi Arabia, which is buying the stock version?
It means the practical military parity remains firmly in Israel's favor. Israel got the F-35s, but then, with U.S. permission, they heavily customized and modified their fleet. They call it the F-35I Adir.
And they made it work better.
Much better. They managed to achieve a staggering 92% operational readiness rate.
92%.
And they installed their own superior electronic warfare suites, their own radar, and they enhanced the flight autonomy. These are the modified Israeli jets that were used in those precision attacks on Iranian targets.
So Saudi Arabia gets a less sophisticated aircraft.
And critically, they lack the experienced pilots, the deep technical maintenance core, and the industrial base you need to manage such a complex logistical beast. It's a very expensive political victory for MBS, but you could argue it's a hollow military one.
Okay, so let's move from the technology to the geopolitical chessboard. What is Saudi Arabia really getting by securing this alignment with the U.S.? Their main regional antagonist is Iran, but that rivalry is complex.
It is. Iran is historically the major antagonist, but its current conventional military status is often overstated. Militarily, Iran is, as the analysis puts it, castrated.
What does that mean exactly?
Yeah. Its conventional military infrastructure has been severely degraded by years of sanctions and a lack of modernization. It has no credible modern air force. And geographically, Saudi Arabia doesn't even share a land border with Iran, so a conventional ground invasion is basically impossible.
So the conflict isn't about conventional war, it's about proxy warfare. And we saw a really fascinating moment of pragmatic cooperation during the Gaza conflict.
We did. Despite not having formal diplomatic relations, the threat posed by Iranian proxies, especially during that recent escalation with attacks coming from Iran, it led to secret operational cooperation.
What kind of cooperation?
The source materials indicate that when missiles and drones were launched from Iran and the Houthis, they often had to cross Saudi territory. And Riyadh was providing crucial real-time intelligence to Israel about these incoming threats.
So they were acting as silent strategic partners against a shared enemy?
Absolutely. And this cooperation also extends to, aviation logistics. Saudi Arabia now allows Israeli and international flights to overfly its territory, which drastically cuts travel times to and from Asia. This pragmatic transactional cooperation is a central, though often unstated, aspect of the new regional order.
But speaking of proxies, the Houthis in Yemen remain Saudi Arabia's most intractable military headache. And they are Iran's only active ally that's capable of causing major disruption to global trade.
The Houthi threat just cannot be overstated.
Right.
They control that narrow strategic choke point in the Red Sea. They have cruise missiles and drones that can bombard commercial ships and, crucially, military targets inside the kingdom.
And Tenenbaum underscores this point pretty heavily.
Yes, Tenenbaum's analysis makes it very clear that despite heavy investment, billions in arms purchases, and years of military aid to the official Yemeni government, Saudi Arabia has demonstrably failed to defeat the Houthis or even control the immediate threat right on their own border.
And the missile attacks on Saudi bases, they're similar in complexity to the ones we've seen against Israel, which really underscores Saudi Arabia's vulnerability.
The security gaps are obvious, and this failure highlights Saudi Arabia's fundamental reliance on external security guarantees, which is why they so desperately need advanced U.S. anti-missile defense systems and the presence of U.S. troops. This ongoing, unresolved conflict directly links back to the price MBS is willing to pay for Trump's protection.
Okay, shifting to the future of Gaza, the U.S. expects Saudi Arabia to foot the bill for reconstruction, potentially billions of dollars. But does that Saudi money buy political influence there?
That is the crucial paradox. The U.S. wants Saudi money for the gargantuan task of rebuilding Gaza, but Saudi Arabia has virtually no political leverage or influence over Hamas.
So who does?
The key political interlocutors, the financiers of Hamas, are Qatar and Turkey.
And the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Qatar is historically volatile?
Extremely volatile. I mean, they were deeply hostile until very recently, bordering on military conflict. Saudi Arabia enforced airspace restrictions, blockades, the whole thing.
But even if they write the biggest check?
Even then, while relations have normalized a bit, that historical animosity means Saudi Arabia just can't easily exert diplomatic pressure in the Gaza dispute. Their financial role is essential, but their political leverage is minimal.
Stepping back into the broader regional context, Saudi Arabia and the UAE, so Dubai and Abu Dhabi, they effectively serve as a geopolitical cash box that maintains regional stability through financial means.
They absolutely do. They are the financial anchor for the entire region. They're continually assisting key partners like Egypt, whose economic situation is just chronically fragile. Egypt requires massive foreign aid injections and debt rollovers to stay afloat.
So Saudi and Emirati money is what's keeping things from falling apart.
It's what stabilizes core parts of the Middle East. It makes them indispensable allies for any Western power trying to maintain order. Because if Egypt were to collapse economically, the resulting regional migration and instability would be, well, catastrophic.
Okay, so we've established that MBS is obsessed with transitioning the kingdom past its dependence on oil. This brings us to the future of technology, the future of data and artificial intelligence.
Correct. Saudi Arabia is deploying its massive sovereign wealth fund to invest heavily abroad, sort of mimicking the successful long-term strategies of Kuwait and Norway.
Right.
But internally, MBS is pushing this rapid modernization to create an environment that can attract global talent and expertise. The social changes allowing women to drive, introducing public entertainment, even the occasional public rave. These are all tactical maneuvers.
They're designed to make the kingdom an attractive place for the international engineers and AI developers who demand certain social freedoms.
Exactly. The strategic goal is crystal clear. Saudi Arabia wants to become a global hub for artificial intelligence and data processing, very similar to the ambitions of the UAE's state-backed AI powerhouse, G42. They understand that data is rapidly becoming the new petroleum.
And that understanding led directly to one of the most technical and, I think, telling parts of this deal with Trump.
The request for powerful GPUs, graphics processing units, from American tech giants like NVIDIA and AMD. These chips are not just for basic computing. They are the absolute engines of the AI world.
Let's just clarify for our listeners the technical distinction here. Why are these specific chips so critical?
Okay, so there are two main concepts in AI inference and training. Inference is simple. It's when you use an existing model, like asking ChatGPT a question, that requires relatively modest computing power. Training, however, is what Saudi Arabia is targeting.
Yeah.
Training involves building and refining these massive multi-billion parameter language models from scratch, and that requires colossal, continuous computing resources. These are the chips you need for that resource-intensive AI training, which is the foundational work if you want to be a major AI power.
So Trump approved the sale of 42,000 chips. That sounds like a monumental number, a huge win for them. But what does the expert analysis from Tenenbaum tell us about the actual utility of that number?
The analysis provided by Tenenbaum is quite clear on this. 42,000 chips are purely symbolic. The analysis literally calls it a joke number when you measure it against their stated goal.
A joke?
Yes. For meaningful, large-scale AI development to truly compete with the US or China in building foundational models, Saudi Arabia needs something closer to 100 million chips.
100 million.
So the approved number is essentially only good for small-scale projects, or more likely, a public relations victory. It serves to show the world, hey, we are in the AI game, but it doesn't give them the necessary operational capability to actually compete.
That really puts the scale of modern AI into perspective, and it also highlights the logistical challenges involved. We often hear about chip contraband, especially with China, but the source material reminds us of the physical reality of shipping this kind of hardware.
The logistical reality, and this is another point analyzed by Tenenbaum,
Okay.
is critical when you talk about sanctions enforcement.
Yeah.
We are not talking about smuggling a few microchips in a suitcase.
No.
A single high-end AI server rack weighs 2 tons. For Saudi Arabia to acquire the tens of thousands of servers they would need for 100 million chips, we're talking about thousands upon thousands of tons of heavy equipment.
Which has to be manufactured, shipped, installed in custom data centers.
And maintained by highly specialized staff. Smuggling the necessary volume underground is just physically impossible. This logistical hurdle is why the U.S. maintains significant leverage, even over its allies.
However, the ultimate geopolitical headache for the U.S. here is still China, specifically the risk of technology transfer through Riyadh.
This is the source of genuine sleepless nights for U.S. policymakers. The fundamental worry is that advanced technology sold to Saudi Arabia could eventually be transferred either willingly or inadvertently to Beijing. And Saudi Arabia's relationship with China is currently stronger and more stable than its relationship with Moscow.
And the U.S. is actively trying to block this.
Yes, there's a pending U.S. congressional law that threatens to prohibit chip exports, not just to China, but potentially to countries like Saudi Arabia, if they can't provide ironclad guarantees against technology diversion. The strategic concern is profound. You could be supplying Riyadh with U.S. chips that end up accelerating a strategic rival, potentially undoing years of export control efforts.
And how does Russia factor into this complex tech equation?
It's transactional and very limited. It's almost entirely about oil policy. Their collaboration is mostly within the framework of OPEC, plus coordinating output and pricing to stabilize global markets. Crucially, Saudi Arabia acts as a kind of enforcement mechanism, making sure Russia doesn't sell its oil illegally below agreed price floors.
But there's no major tech or security collaboration?
No significant security, arms, or technological collaboration between Riyadh and Moscow. Not in the way there is with Beijing.
Okay, let's look at the critical security component of the deal. Saudi Arabia is buying military tech, and in exchange, they're going to allow for a continuous, reinforced U.S. military presence.
Primarily for protection, they're requesting U.S. anti-missile defense systems, like the aging Patriots.
But the presence of U.S. troops, that raises a profound cultural conflict risk, doesn't it?
It does. It's the ultimate strategic prize for MBS, but it's risky. Saudi Arabia is still a highly conservative nation dominated by Wahhabi religious traditions. You have to contrast that with nearby Bahrain, which houses a major U.S. naval base. Bahrain is a much more secularized, liberal society.
And the cultural divide is famously illustrated by the anecdote about the bridge that connects the two countries.
The King Fahd Bridge. It connects the eastern Saudi coast to Bahrain, and it's famous because Saudis cross it precisely to access a more liberal environment.
To access things prohibited at home.
Alcohol, legal prostitution, liberal shopping centers, yes. So housing thousands of U.S. troops who bring their own culture, their own lifestyle, their own freedoms inside the conservative kingdom poses a constant threat of friction. MBS has to manage this extremely carefully, especially to prevent backlash from the very orthodox elements of his country who could accuse him of westernizing the kingdom too quickly.
And what about local manufacturing? MBS has publicly stated he wants to produce advanced weapons locally. Is that just for domestic PR?
Mostly.
Yeah.
The expert analysis from Tenenbaum states plainly that this idea has no future in the medium term. Manufacturing sophisticated weaponry like F-35 components or advanced missile systems requires immense technical expertise, a mature industrial base, and complex supply chains that Saudi Arabia simply does not have.
So if these factories get built, who runs them?
For Saudi Arabia to produce truly complicated advanced weaponry, U.S. companies, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, they would have to build the facilities and, crucially, staff them almost completely with their own American expatriate personnel.
Meaning they'd be operating out of those secure, self-contained compounds.
Exactly. Operating in isolated expatriate zones, enjoying the social freedoms unavailable outside the compound walls, completely cut off from the local society. This local production claim remains a key public relations strategy for MBS to suggest self-sufficiency and nationalism. But the reality of high-tech arms production is decades away. Their dependence on U.S. tech and personnel will remain absolute.
Stepping back from this specific deal, how is Europe viewing this massive power and money play? Are they even a factor?
Europe is increasingly marginalized and weak on the global stage. They lack decisive, unified leadership, and they're economically and militarily dependent. Germany, for so long the engine of Europe, is facing a severe industrial crisis.
High energy costs, regulatory burdens?
All of it. And France is economically fragile, running a massive deficit that violates EU fiscal stability rules and struggling to pass necessary structural reforms. Their sovereign debt is actually rated worse than some French corporate bonds, which is a sign of profound financial distress.
And their geopolitical clout is minimal.
Completely. They are totally unable to fund Ukraine without substantial help from the U.S. They are, frankly, terrified of an aggressive Russia, yet they can't adequately arm themselves. And on top of that, they completely botched their AI regulation efforts.
Who got them there?
They spent years debating this idealistic ethical framework, the so-called AI Act, that was ultimately so cumbersome and slow that they failed to implement anything workable in time. Now they're desperately trying to play catch-up technologically to the U.S. and China.
And this dependency is highlighted by the anecdotes about their diplomatic efforts to reach out to potential future U.S. administrations.
It's almost sad. They've become so reliant on U.S. leadership that they're reduced to using proxy diplomats, like the former very tall Finnish prime minister who happened to cultivate a friendship with Trump just to communicate Europe's needs and anxieties to the former president. It speaks to a profound lack of self-reliance.
Okay, let's use the final part of our deep dive to review some of the other critical global flashpoints mentioned in the analysis, starting with Trump's proposed Ukraine peace agreement.
This peace proposal is often cited as a key piece of his foreign policy platform, but the analysis calls it profoundly amateur.
Amateur.
The published 28-point agreement contains direct and often comical contradictions. For example, it demands an immediate ceasefire and troop withdrawal, but then it proposes mechanisms that require future NATO consultation and guarantees that would completely contradict Russia's maximalist demands.
So it's not a serious diplomatic proposal.
It's very poorly formulated. It was clearly not drafted by serious diplomatic professionals who understand the regional sensitivities. It just won't happen. Zelensky can't politically sell a capitulation to his people, and it gives Russia exactly what it wants: a freeze on the current lines. Plus, crucial regional allies were insulted. Poland publicly warned Trump that they need to be consulted on any agreements involving their security.
It shows a lack of preparation.
And consultation.
Him.
Then there was that surprising meeting with a former antagonist, Sora Mamdani, which was framed as a lesson in negotiation mastery.
What was the takeaway there?
That meeting was pure political theater. It was designed to be Trump's master negotiator moment. The body language told the whole story. Trump was seated comfortably in this massive high-backed chair, projecting dominance, while Mamdani was forced to stand.
And Trump was seen instructing him on how to answer questions.
Literally telling him, say yes to that, ensuring the public narrative was entirely controlled. It was a complete strategic dismantling of the opposition and a mastery of public optics to project power.
This level of political intensity ties back to the deepening U.S. political polarization, the Grieta, the Great Rift, which is now affecting even basic social structures like family gatherings.
This is a profoundly problematic trend, and the analysis highlights it. The polarization is so severe, the Grieta is so deep, that families are actively refusing to gather for major holidays like Thanksgiving because of political differences.
That's incredible.
And the analysis suggests this problem is disproportionately driven by figures on the left, with important media figures and commentators explicitly advising people to cut off or refuse to speak to family members who support Trump. This isn't just political disagreement, it's the political infection of civil society.
Let's briefly touch on the Venezuelan security situation and the strategic messaging directed toward Mexico.
Right. In Venezuela, all international flights were suspended, which is a massive signal of instability. Critically, these suspensions weren't initiated by the airlines, but by the international insurance companies, the true owners of risk in global transport. They just deemed the situation too volatile to insure.
So is a U.S. invasion a possibility?
A full-scale invasion is highly unlikely, but a limited bombing of Venezuelan bases is a possibility.
But the bombing wouldn't be the main message.
No, the primary message wouldn't be for the Maduro regime. The far more important message would be for Mexico, which is the real source of drug trafficking, fentanyl, and instability along the U.S. border. Bombing a secondary target sends a clear warning without starting a major costly conflict.
And Mexico's new president, Claudia Sheinbaum, is facing some severe challenges right out of the gate, despite her unique background.
She is a very cultured president, the daughter of university professors, and unlike her predecessor, she seems to be seriously attempting to fight the cartels. However, during recent protests, she faced these unexpected and deeply nasty anti-Semitic attacks.
Graffiti calling her a Jewish bee.
Exactly. And this is particularly complex given her administration's official stance, which has been relatively pro-Haas in international forums.
So regardless of her political alignment, she's still defined by her background.
And that's the insightful observation drawn by Tenenbaum. Regardless of her administration's policies, and even if she tries to distance herself from her heritage politically, someone will inevitably remind her, often in the most vitriolic way possible, of her Jewish background. It just underscores the pervasive nature of identity politics and intolerance.
This deep dive has done exactly what we set out to do. We've laid bare the unprecedented complexity of this Trump-Saudi relationship. It's a high-stakes transactional trade of geopolitical weight and superior, though not the most superior technology, in exchange for a staggering amount of cash and the crucial political rehabilitation of a figure once cast out by the West.
And the key takeaway, driven by the overall synthesis of the analysis, is this fundamental shift in what the world's most valuable commodity is. The real resource moving the world today is no longer crude oil. It's data and the chips required to process it. And Saudi Arabia is taking its entire future on becoming a data center powerhouse.
And the core conflict that Tenenbaum's analysis illuminates is this. The U.S. is simultaneously courting Saudi investment with promises of arms and technology, while also struggling with the massive existential risk that this new petroleum, the data infrastructure, the advanced processing chips, inevitably finds its way to rival powers, particularly China.
Right. Thus accelerating the very strategic competition the U.S. is trying to contain.
That friction point, that tension between accepting investment now versus protecting technological supremacy tomorrow, is the essential conflict that will define U.S. geopolitical strategy for the rest of this decade.
It's a dynamic bargain that, as Tenenbaum concludes, carries enormous long-term risk for what is essentially short-term financial gain.
It's the ultimate transaction of the 21st century. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We encourage you to consider these global connections and continue exploring how massive